Hi, I'm host Eric, talking with Fence People of the show. I'm here with Lorenz Walker. He's leaving very soon, 5 or 10 minutes, and I just wanted to briefly talk about what we were just talking about before I started the videoing, namely this idea of a just multiculturalism. And I was reading some segments out, and I will put the link to it in the description for this video. It's an article called Just Multiculturalism by Laurie Grobman. And basically, she writes as somebody who feels strongly that multiculturalism, the notion that everybody should be treated as human as everybody else, is absolutely sound. But that in promoting those ideals, the critical theory left has come to advocate or turn a blind eye or turn a blind ear to horrifically unethical behavior in support of their shared political view. So, anybody have any comments on that? Lorenz, you got any thoughts on that?
No, not specifically. Could you ask me a question?
Sure, yeah. To what extent do you think that people's speech should be limited so as to not cause other individuals emotional discomfort? For example, should I be able to go onto a college campus and, assuming that the coffee shop owner booked me for a gig, could I get up there and do a whole night of rape jokes? Would that be okay, or should they be able to say, no, you may not do that here, even if the coffee shop's private property, even if the coffee shop owner says you can?
Who says you can't do it?
The college. The coffee shop's on a college campus, let's say, but it's privately owned, okay?
What kind of joke?
Rape jokes. You've got a 45-minute set of nothing but rape jokes. And you want to go do that set in the Women's Center at the Harriet B. Tubman building on campus.
Well, I mean, that is, yeah. Unify says rape jokes are fine, and I agree, but it's just kind of absurd that there's a 45-minute set.
Of nothing but rape jokes?
If it's on the college campus, then I guess it's technically up to their discretion whether or not they want to withhold differing levels of freedom of speech.
Well, is it? If it's a public institution, they're constrained. Private colleges have a lot more latitude regarding that than public institutions. But I mean, regardless, the point being, on a college campus, they are not asserting their property rights to prevent you from speaking. That's not their justification. Their justification is, we don't like what you're saying.
Well, yeah, I don't think that should matter as much.
Right. I mean, my take on it is, if somebody wants to go do that, and I'm a women's studies professor, I would say, okay, guys, we're going to this show, and I want you guys to take notes on everything he says and does, and let's critique it. In fact, what we'll do is, after about 25 minutes of his set, we'll start our critiques. I'll start class in the coffee shop during his set. It's a much better fucking solution than being all pissy about it, right? There's so many opportunities there, and yet you're gonna try to ban him?
You can't just simply shush it away.
Yeah, exactly.
This is real life. You can't be censoring everything and everybody.
Well, and if the ideas truly are bad and reprehensible, then they need to be exposed to the light of the day so that people can see them and react to them. It's like when Ray Rice punched his woman, right? Until the video came out, people were kind of like, well, where, as soon as the video came out, people saw it, they're like, oh my God, Remember that time? Remember that guy Ray Rice who punched that woman, his woman?
I would think so. I'm not sure.
Yeah, he was a football player. He still is, actually, I think. And there was a big uproar about it because people were like, well, the NFL should fire him because he punched his woman. But, I mean, that's not the NFL's business, is my point. But
Yeah.
regardless about that, it's a scene thing, right?
It's a what thing?
It's a scene thing. Being exposed to a bad idea forces that bad idea to compete for supremacy. Making a bad idea go away allows it to fester in private.
Oh, I see. And
You,
also on the rape jokes, I mean, is it just gonna be like 45 minutes of just like bad rape jokes?
yeah, they're terrible. They're terrible. There are jokes like this. So the other day I was walking down the street and I saw this old woman sleeping on a park bench. So I raped her. Next, I went to the children's hospital and raped a bunch of children. Then I went over there and raped some people. It was just like garbage, just like that. 45 minutes of just nonstop offensive statements about raping people.
God damn it.
He's a bad comedian too. Okay, I want to stress it. There's no redeeming quality in it. It's just
This what?
well, he thinks he's hilarious. He thinks he's the most hilarious guy in the world. He can't understand why people don't think he's funny. I once made I
I
had
guess he
a,
has the right to say whatever he wants. That people can combat him on that.
yeah, you know, one time I made this was about 10 years ago or 12, 13 years ago. I was playing a open mic and I made a joke about raping Sesame Street characters. And and one of the audience members got really offended and talked to me about it after the show. But she didn't interrupt the set, which I appreciate. She talked to me about it after the show. And I was like, well, obviously that's a joke, right?
Yeah.
Sesame Street characters don't even have holes. Any other
Yeah.
thoughts?
Well,
Was my
I don't
joke
know.
funny? Yeah, it was funny. I thought it was.
Like, I mean, is somebody being offended? Like, what does that give them right to? Like, they're just offended. So, I mean, does that mean that they could censor people, or like they could just bring up that they're offended, and that's pretty much it, right?
Well, I mean, I think the reason people feel like there's maybe some justification for policing words is, there's if you were to like if you were in a car full of like straight white men, I don't know, 20 years ago, and you drive up alongside of a homosexual walking down the street and scream faggot at him over and over again, people would say you are committing ontological violence against that person. You are as you know. But see, I look. Thing is, I'm not saying that should be banned. I'm saying these. I'm trying to find examples of things that people think maybe we should, because I'm trying to make it so that we understand, like, they're not motivated by evil, right? These people aren't.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between attacking somebody and like singling out one specific like sect of people and making rape jokes or just using your freedom of speech instead of like I don't know.
I think it also makes a difference if where, like, the context. For example, if you are watching a set of comedy and it's full of rape jokes and you're a rape victim and you're the only female in the club and all the men in the club are laughing uproariously at every single one of those, you're not going to feel as though your perspective or identity is being validated by those circumstances very much, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the example I gave, where the comedian goes and does that in the women's center on college campus, he's the one who's going to be he's going to be in enemy territory, you know? So it matters whether the territory is enemy or friendly territory, I think, somewhat.
Yeah, depends on like the general consensus of the area that you're in of whether or not something's okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, Unify says even if it's mean, do you have the right to say it? I mean, I think in general, yeah, you do, and I think that
Yeah.
the best solution to that is social solutions. If somebody's an asshole all the time to everybody, they will eventually stop having any friends, right? It's sort of a natural consequence. And I think there are very few environments in America anyway anymore that tolerate open, harassing hate speech.
Yeah. And is that right to be policed?
Well, I think it's absolutely right to be policed informally, but that means like it means basically calling somebody out on shit. We should all police each other on our bullshit for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very different thing than having laws or rules. See, when you go TE with it, absolutely we should police shit with TI all the time. That doesn't make any sense, or that violates rights, or things like that. That's not fair. Those are all good TI responses to it. The problem with making codified rules is one thing, it empowers the people who have negative things to say, because now all of a sudden they have the moral high ground. You're the one who's coercing them to be silent. And that you don't want the morons who are expressing like just hateful racism or whatever. You don't want to give them the moral high ground. I don't anyway.
Hmm.
It's much more effective to shame them, to taunt them for their silliness.
Unify says people are more offended today than ever before. Why might that be the case?
Is that true? Are people today more offended than ever before?
Seemingly so, but there's a lot of factors that could go into that.
I mean, I think people are feeling more empowered than they had been before, but they're not any better trained in argumentation, so they don't really, they don't check themselves for consistency. Yeah, they're just offended by different things. I think people are offended by better things now. I think people, when they get offended now, they have more good cause to be offended. It's usually people get offended by shit that's bullshit. Uh, but the problem is it's a lack of principlism, right? They don't have a way of understanding. Well, where do I put the limits to my multiculturalism, and why? They're not operating from a model because the way they've been taught is basically in support of ethical relativism. And that's what that article says. It's basically like, well, when we teach them, we're going to learn about other cultures by appreciating them, by talking about their food and their dress and their whatever, and how they have different views, but they're just as good as we are. When we do that shit, that we're actually
That's
contributing
why I think you
to.
should look at the reality of the situation and look at the pros and cons of civilizations and like get rid of the view that everything is like just okay.
Yeah, evaluate things by their merits. I mean, I tend to agree. I think that the opposition would say um, the only way you can evaluate things by their merits, when you do that, you are just expressing your Western American uh, implicit worldview. It's no more valid or less valid than those that you are critiquing. That's what a a multicultural relativist would try to argue. That you can't escape your own frame of reference. You're trying to. You're trying to say, come up with all these different reasons why our frame of reference is superior, or that particular action is bad, or that frame of reference is bad, but you cannot escape your own frame of reference. So necessarily, um, what you're trying to do is impossible, and therefore we should never. We should only judge individuals in comparison to their own culture's moral systems, not in comparison to some universal morality.
I
That's
think
what
that's bull.
you think. That's what?
I think that's bullshit.
Yeah, I agree. It's bullshit.
Because I think
Uh,
there's more of there's more of like a basic human morality system that we could kind of all have some general consensus about. Like murder is probably bad to any culture, whether or not one culture might see it differently or not.
right.
Like, because when it comes to cultures, I mean, it's just it could be you can have like a small group of people, and then like you could have them just raised with a widely different mindset, and you can make them think different things. But just because that group thinks that, is it going to be okay to everyone else?
Well, see, that's the way I managed to actually find this article. I googled something that produced exactly 9 results. I expected a lot of results when I googled this, and I got only 9. It's in quotes. It says the presumption of quote we unquote by Lorenz Walker. Presumption
Bye.
of have a good evening. Uh, yeah, the presumption of we, and then we is in quotes as well. So it's quote the presumption of quote we unquote unquote. If you Google that, it's only 9 results, and one of them is that great article called "Just Multiculturalism" by Laurie Grobman. Laurie Grobman. And that brings this exciting episode of Talking with Famous People, in which we discussed Laurie Grobman's PDF, Just Multiculturalism, to a close. Have a pleasant evening. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese. And join us for another exciting episode of Talking with Famous People soon. The end.